الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Now, inshallah, with this halaqah, we'll keep it brief as we've done before, but today's halaqah will be very, very important. Before, we've gone through a little bit in terms of the sifah of the prayer, the way that a person should pray, the importance of it, and so on. Today, inshallah, we will make bullet points the arkan of the prayer. And arkan is the jam'u rukun, meaning pillars. We've all been taught from a young age, arkan of Islam, the pillars of Islam. But when you study the fiqh, you'll actually come across that most aspects of worship, they often have pillars, important things that if you forget to do these parts, then that whole part of the prayer or worship will not be accepted. So for example, siyam, fasting, it has arkan, it has pillars. The hajj that people do, it has arkan, it has pillars. Meaning you have to do certain things during the hajj. If you do not do them, then your whole hajj is invalid. Okay. Similarly, fasting. The fasting has arkan. If you do not do certain things when you're fasting, the most important aspects of fasting, the intention and not eating and drinking, these things are counted as arkan. So you'll see that not just the whole religion, arkan al-Islam and arkan al-Iman, but every single worship, they have arkan. Sadaqah, giving charity, there's also arkan in it, and there's rulings concerning it. Okay, so the most important aspects is considered to be a rukun, and the scholars in Islam, they say the rukun is the thing that if you remove it, then the whole thing collapses. In the same way that if you have a building, a masjid, a house, if you remove the pillar, what happens? The whole thing falls down. So in prayer, if you do not do these things on purpose, then your salah is batil. It is not accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you do it on purpose. Okay? And so much so that if a person does it on purpose, then some scholars would even say this falls underneath istihza. It falls underneath making fun of the religion. If you do it on purpose, you know you should be doing it, but you still don't do it, then it's istihza, and istihza, making fun of the religion, is actually something that takes a person outside the fold of Islam. It is an aqad min nawaqid al-Islam, so it's a very dangerous thing. But alhamdulillah, if you are a Muslim, the only reason that you might make a mistake, it is due to forgetfulness, if you forget. And we all forget. So what happens if you forget? We'll speak about it more in detail later on, but for now, what is sufficient to know is if you forget, then at the very least, you have to repeat it. You have to do it. You cannot go beyond it. You have to repeat what you forgot. So these points are quite a lot, but they're important for us to remember, and we always refresh our memory time and time again. So the scholars in Islam, depending on the madhab that you follow, and depending on how they've divided these, they might be different in number. Some scholars, they say they're 15, some they say 14, some might say 13. But they are similar, very, very close. Okay. So what are these 14 points? We'll say 14 to make it simple. The first point or pillar when it comes to salah that you have to make sure that you fulfill is qiyam, meaning that you stand up for the salah. And this is for the fard. The Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha prayers, you have to stand up praying. The only reason why you should be sitting down is if you are unable to stand up. And the religion is easy. The religion is easy. Meaning that if a person is unable to stand up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for that person and they can pray in whatever situation they are. Either sitting down or even on ala jams, on their side, or even lying down, they can pray in whatever way they can physically. But if you are healthy, then you should be standing up for prayer. Whereas the sunan prayer, anything that is not the fard, you can actually sit down and pray. You can sit down and pray. So if a person wanted to pray Tarawih, let's say Tarawih, which is sunnah prayer, it is long and you do not want to stand up, you can actually sit down. And you don't have to be sick. You don't have to be sick. You can sit down even if you can stand up. But you have to remember that the Prophet ﷺ said, if you sit down, then you get half the reward. You get half the reward of the person that is standing up. So you are losing out on the reward, but it is still halal for you. And this is good, especially when it comes to the sunnah prayers. Isha, if Isha is very late and you're tired, if Maghrib is late and you're tired, or in general if you're tired, instead of not praying sunnah at all, what you can do is you pray sitting down. You pray sitting down. But as for the other prayers, you should pray standing up. So that is the first pillar. After that, we have the takbir, takbiratul ihram, which is the entering of the prayer. The first takbir, Allahu Akbar, when you say Allahu Akbar and you enter the salah, this is what is a pillar. This is the pillar. If a person forgets to say it, then the salah is not accepted. If you say anything else other than it, if you say Allahu Ghafur or Allahu Rahim and you try to enter the salah, it will not be accepted according to the scholars in Islam, and you have to say the same way that the Prophet ﷺ said, meaning you say Allahu Akbar. And the Prophet ﷺ said in that well-known hadith, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, meaning pray in the same way that you have seen me pray. Pray in the same way that you have seen me pray. So when it comes to prayer, when it comes to worship in general, we as Muslims, we are not allowed to come with some new form of prayer. We should follow the Prophet ﷺ as much as we can. So that first takbirah, it is rukun min arkan salah, and then you have Fatiha. The recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha, it is a must. You have to read it. If you make a mistake in Surah Al-Fatiha, what do you have to do? You have to go back and you have to correct it. If the Imam forgets one verse, if he jumps one verse, then the people behind him have to correct him and repeat that one verse, and he has to recite it. Okay? So if you are praying by yourself or your Imam, you have to read Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, until the end. And if you are being led, if you're the ma'moom, someone is leading you, whether in the masjid or at home, anywhere, the scholars in Islam, they have difference of opinion, and some of them they say it is sufficient for you to, for the Imam to recite. So even if you don't read it yourself, as long as the Imam has read Surah Al-Fatiha, then this is accepted. Moving on, the next part of the salah that cannot be skipped or missed or forgotten, it is the ruku'. The ruku', when you bow down in prayer, this is not something that can be forgotten. If a person, let's say they go from the qiyam, standing up, and they go all the way down, to the sujood instead of going to ruku', then they have to be reminded. They have to be reminded, so they go back to the ruku' and they carry on from there. Another point that people don't realize is from the rukun, it is raf min al-ruku', coming back up from the ruku'. Okay? So a person cannot go from ruku' and straight down to sujood. You have to actually come back up. And the way that you come back up, you say Sami Allahu liman hamida, and then you raise your hands. It's mentioned in the narrations that you raise your hands in the way that you would do in the beginning of Salah. You see some people, what they do is, they say Sami Allahu liman hamida, and they go like that, and then in the form of dua, right? But if you look at the way that it has been described by the Prophet ﷺ, it is that you raise your hands like this, and some scholars say that you do not raise your hands. However, the ones that raise their hands is closer to the truth, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. And then i'tidal. Another good point is i'tidal. What does i'tidal mean? It means that you take your time and you straighten out and you relax yourself. Okay. Some people you'll see when they pray very fast. So they come up from the ruku'. Before the body even rests in that position, they go straight down to sujood. This is not how it's supposed to be. Okay, Salah is not a race. It is not something that should be rushed. You're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you take your time, you do it properly, and no sudden movement. So you come back from the ruku', Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, and then you stand there. You should stand there for a little bit, not too long and not too short, and then you go down for your sujood. Okay? And then obviously the next point would be the sujood itself. So the sujood, it is a rukun. Both of the sujood are considered by the scholars in Islam to be rukun min arkan as-salah. It cannot be forgotten. And then following that sujood, it is the julus, meaning the sitting, or the sitting between the two sujood. So we know that when you go in sujood, you come back up, you sit down, and then you go to sujood again. That sitting, it is a must. It is a must. It is a pillar. It cannot be forgotten, and it should not be a quick one. You should at least sit and say the proper adhkar, and then go back into sujood again. And throughout this whole prayer, there's another point here, which is tranquility. Okay? Meaning that your whole prayer from beginning until the end should be in a slow manner, in a very slow way, not too slow and not too fast. Okay? You should take your time, ponder, think, reflect on everything that you say. The salah, unfortunately, today it's become so much a routine that we don't even think of what we say. And for many people, they might not understand the Arabic, they might not know what they're saying. But even then, you should try to bring back your thoughts all the time. I'm standing in front of Allah. I am following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. I am praying to Allah. I am asking Allah for forgiveness. I'm asking Allah to have mercy on me. And if you bring your thoughts back all the time, your concentration will be in the salah. And in some narrations, the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that the worst of thieves, people who steal, are the ones who steal from their salah, Meaning that the salah is supposed to be slow and moderate, and you think about what you say, but what they do is they peck like the rooster or the hen, the chicken, going up and down quickly. Okay? And this is not what prayer is. And subhanAllah, the sad thing is there's some statements by the companions. Once the Prophet ﷺ passed away, some of the companions, they lived for a long time after the Prophet ﷺ, right? And then some of them saw the tabi'een. And they would tell the tabi'een, their students, when they saw them praying, they would say to them, if the Prophet ﷺ in our generation saw the way that you're praying or saw your whole religion, they would not recognize any of it except the adhan. Except the adhan they would recognize. Meaning that they had, in just one generation, people had become so relaxed in their prayers, so relaxed in everything, that they had completely forgot the true intention and the true way that the Prophet ﷺ used to pray and used to ask for forgiveness. And imagine that is one generation after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. Not even a full generation. People are still alive that saw the Prophet ﷺ. And now, 1,400 years more has passed. Imagine what the early generations would recognize of Islam today. And then the following pillar is the tashahhud. The tashahhud, meaning the tashahhud al-akhir, the last tashahhud. Okay, when you sit down for the last tashahhud, that is considered by scholars to be a rukun, a pillar of Islam, a pillar of prayer, and you cannot forget it. And if you do forget it, you have to repeat it. And some scholars, they add together this one and the julus for it. Saying the tashahhud is one thing, and also the julus to sit for the tashahhud. Okay, so you have to sit for the tashahhud and say it. So those are pillars. And then you have the taslimatan, okay? Meaning the salam that you say at the end of the prayer. Some of the scholars, they say that the first assalamu alaikum, it is the rukun, and the other one is not. Okay? And others, they say no, both of them, you say assalamu alaikum, assalamu alaikum. And there's different ways of saying this. Like I just said, one of them is that you say assalamu alaikum and assalamu alaikum. Okay? Or some of the scholars, they say you say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And you can even say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And this is good to know, because if you hear, most times in our prayer we hear people, the Imam saying assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So if you hear someone saying assalamu alaikum and assalamu alaikum, it is not something that is wrong. Or if you hear someone saying assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, it is not something that is wrong, and Allah knows best. And then the final pillar in terms of the prayer is the tartib, meaning the way that things are done, the succession. Okay? And by that they mean that each thing has to be done in order. You cannot start saying Allahu Akbar and then go straight to ruku'. You cannot say Allahu Akbar and go straight to sujood. Except, obviously, if you come late for the salah and you're joining, you join wherever the Imam is. Okay? So if the Imam is in tashahhud, you go straight and you join the tashahhud. And also an important point that people often forget, and it is important to make here, is that when you join the salah, you should actually say two different takbir. Meaning, when you come to the salah and you want to join and you want to enter the salah, what do you have to say first? You say takbiratul ihram in order to enter the salah. So you say Allahu Akbar, now you've entered the salah. So what do you do next? Then the next takbirah you say for the intiqal, for the movement. Okay, so you say Allahu Akbar, now you've entered the salah. So where are they? Maybe they're in ruku'. Let's say they're in ruku'. So you come, Allahu Akbar, they're in ruku', Allahu Akbar, again, and you go in. Okay? So you do not say Allahu Akbar and you go straight to where the person is. And this is a mistake that scholars they highlight in the books of fiqh, that people they should remember to make the 2 takbirah. So you say Allahu Akbar, you enter the salah, and then the next Allahu Akbar should be for the movement. The order, the tartib that is mentioned by some of the scholars, this is not only for the salah, it is also for the wudu. Okay, when you make wudu, the scholars they mention the same thing. One of the points to follow in the wudu is the tartib, that you have to make sure that you do it in order. And why is it important that you do it in order? It is important because you're following the Prophet ﷺ. If it wasn't important, then you could do it in any way you want. And this is one of the beautiful things about our religion, is that the Prophet ﷺ is the person who we follow because of the wahi that he receives. And because of that, it unifies the Muslim Ummah. It unifies the Muslim Ummah. Imagine for a moment if there was no Prophet. If there was no Prophet, what would happen? People would say, let's worship Allah, and one person would turn on music and say, this is how I worship Allah. Another person would say, bring some food and we'll worship Allah together. Everyone would do whatever they want. Some people would clap, people would do every other thing and say, this is the way that I worship Allah. And you see this in other religions, in other practices, that people, they say, my connection with God, they say it is personal. It is personal. But then they say, I worship my God the way that I want to. But when you do that, you have each person doing their own thing. Whereas in Islam, it helps to bring people united. It does not mean that your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not personal. It does not mean that you worship Allah, that you don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your own way. But your own way should be in a way that is following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for you to give charity sadaqah. That is your way. But how do you give charity? You give charity the way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do. Some people, Allah has blessed them with a kind heart. A kind heart. So they love to help people. Wherever they see people, they want to help them. Whether it's young people or old people or whatever it might be, they want to help them. So that is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made easy for you, and the way that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, how do you serve people? You serve them in the same way, similar to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You do not start inventing new things and say, this is how I serve people. So inshallah with that, we will conclude today's halaqah.